Yeah, you can have a seat. The carpet's clean. What? No, when it goes. The Torah portion that you've just heard so beautifully rendered creates more questions than answers. And these questions inspired me several years ago to write a story. The Torah is a book with stories that stimulate new stories that then generate more stories. And I imagine my story not with one, but with 3 possible endings. I hope that your family will discuss these endings with one another on the way home, and perhaps you'll think of one that didn't even occur to me. If you do, write me a note and let me know how you think the story should have ended. Now, everyone knows the fairy tale about the frog who was really a prince who managed to persuade the beautiful princess to trust him, and by kissing him, break the ugly curse that had turned him from prince to frog. A harmless tale indeed for us, but you have no idea what an effect it had on life back at the pond. You see, most of the frogs failed to realize that the story was merely make-believe. In fact, if anything, they believed it was completely true. Needless to say, it seemed to hold out a hope for escape from the mundane world of puddle jumping and fly catching. To illustrate the extent to which this hope occupied frogdom, let us focus on one family, the Toadnoys, though theirs was not by any means an isolated case. Abraham and Sarah Toadnoy were blessed with an only son by the name of Isaac. From the time Isaac was a squiggly tadpole to the first time he set his webbed feet on the lily pad, Abe and Sarah Toadnoy doted on him completely. There could be no doubt that young Isaac was one day destined to escape the pond, for Abe and Sarah agreed that with proper care and training, Isaac would one day become a prince. Their devotion to Isaac was complete. He was clearly the center of their lives. Mrs. Toadnoy rocked her baby Isaac to sleep each night singing softly, "Someday my prince will come." Mr. Toadnoy put away a bit of his earnings each week so that by the time Isaac had reached his 5th birthday, he was able to buy his son a little golden throne, complete with crown and with sword. Unfortunately, Isaac was far too slippery to sit comfortably on the miniature throne. The crown drooped over his eyes. The sword slipped out of his hand and was lost in the muck at the bottom of the pond. When Isaac complained to his mother and said, "I really would have preferred a dish of fresh flies or a nice juicy spider," his mother loudly exclaimed, "Oy vey, Izmir, your poor papa works day and night so that you can have what we didn't. And do you appreciate?" And she walked away beating her breast. Isaac seldom was allowed to go out and swim with his friends. His after-school time was monopolized by special tutors who were brought from the distant corners of the pond to teach Isaac the finer points of life at court. A goldfish was engaged to teach Isaac to drink tea with his webbed pinky extended. A nightingale to help him to appreciate the beauty of Baroque music. A beaver from the nearby dam, a chap with a long scar on his right cheek, was employed as a fencing instructor, and an arrangement was made with a bumblebee to teach him how to waltz. At age 15, Isaac attempted to persuade his parents to let him go out and jump around with some of the other teenage frogs. He was particularly attracted to Lucille, a 14-year-old next door who played heavy metal croak and roll music all day and all night and was constantly throwing parties for her friends. Isaac wished that his parents would forget the plans to make a prince out of him and just let him be like all the other frogs. His mother caught him one night doing the hop in his room instead of practicing the minuet, and she ran out screaming to his father, "Abe, Abe, he's trying to murder me." His father entered the room and lectured him for an hour, telling him, "Your mother and I know what will bring you happiness, son. Believe me, someday when you're a prince, you'll thank us for all this." Isaac sighed, looked out the window over towards Lucille's, and murmured that he would disobey no more. Finally, Isaac turned 18 and prepared to leave home to travel with his father to the princess's castle. Sarah Todnoi wiped a giant frog tear from her goggle eyes, kissed Isaac goodbye, and said, "Make us proud of you, dear. Remember everything we taught you, and you'll soon be a handsome prince." Your poor father always wanted that opportunity, but his parents came from the other side of the dam, and they were far too poor to give him lessons in all the things that you have learned. After a 2-day journey, Isaac and his father arrived outside the moat that surrounded the castle. "This is where I leave you, son," Abraham said. "Just an easy swim across the moat, 5 short hops up the hill, and you'll be at the gates of the castle. Don't forget us. Croak a message home every week to let us know that you're healthy and eating well." With that, Isaac bid his father goodbye. Isaac had no trouble slipping under the castle gates. Once inside, he hopped around until he found the dining room and leaped up under the serviette which had been placed over a tray of food that was intended for the princess. The tray was delivered, and Isaac peeked out to get a glimpse of the princess, who, though attractive, was nothing compared to Lucille. The princess lifted the napkin, and Isaac prepared to win her over, just as he was taught, by offering her a mosquito with which his speedy tongue had captured as he entered the room. Before he could open his mouth, the princess let out a terrible shriek and commanded the palace guards, "Come here at once and rid me of this vile and ugly creature." Isaac looked around, wondering to whom she was referring, for he hadn't seen anyone else in the room. Before he knew it, a giant guard had lifted him up from the tray, thrown him out the open window to the hard earth below. His body aching, Isaac cursed the plans that had sent him to the castle and slowly dragged himself back to the pond. When Abe and Sarah Todnoi peeked out from under the lily pad and saw Isaac, they could not understand what had happened. As Isaac told them about his unfortunate adventures at the castle, Mrs. Todnoi was inconsolable. "Abe, Abe, where did we go wrong?" she cried. Ending number 1. No explanation that Isaac offered could satisfy his upset parents. In their eyes, he was an abject and utter failure, for it was clear that he would never become a prince, but was doomed to live forever as a frog, just as they were. Isaac begged them to understand, to put his happiness ahead of their ambition. "You are no son of ours," declared his father as he pointed to the door. "All the talent and opportunities in the world, and you squandered them. Go live among the newts. You have no place here. Ending 2. Despite the remorseful apologies offered by his repentant parents, Isaac could never forgive them for the stress that they had imposed upon him, nor for the humiliation they had caused him to suffer. You've stolen my childhood. Every gift you gave me was truly for the sake of your own standing in the community. I have returned only to say goodbye forever. Abe and Sarah Todnoy learned from neighbors that Isaac and Lucille were living on the western edge of the pond, running a macrobiotic health food store. Every letter they sent to their son was returned with a stamp that said, addressee unknown. Ending 3. Well, said Isaac, I don't really think you could have done anything more. But you see, all of my life, I never wanted to be a prince. I just wanted to be myself. I know that you love me, and I love you. But I'm afraid you'll just have to be satisfied with me just as I am. All I can do is be the very best frog that I can be. With that, Abe and Sarah embraced their son and started to cry. You know, Isaac, Abe Todnoy said, no matter how old you are, you can always learn to change when you have been wrong. We tried to raise our son to be a prince. Instead, he became the wisest frog in the pond. Alex smiled, returned his parents' embrace, and hopped next door to visit Lucille. So if you come up with another ending, send it to me. If you'll go back to the seat